Speaker, we have Miss Melea Thomas.
He was a 19-year-old boy whose life was going down. He was attending military high school in Hays, Kansas, with nothing to look forward to after graduation. Daniel had no plans for the future, no idea of what he wanted to be. In 1962, he and his buddy Bob Winfrey decided to join the Marines. That was the tough guy branch. This was what he saw as his only option. He didn't know that this would change his life forever. The Marines, or as Dan thought of it, the tough guy branch, have been around since 1775. Captain Samuel Nicholas started 2 battalions as naval infantry. Since then, the Marines have fought in nearly every American armed conflict there has been. I think this is why Dan and Bob saw it as the toughest or best branch of the military. Their nickname says it all. The few, the proud, the Marines. The Marines' role is amphibious and expeditionary warfare. This means that they fight on land, air, and sea. They fight in the country as well as overseas. It is considered a huge accomplishment to be a Marine. In 1962, Dan and Bob were shipped to boot camp in San Diego, California. 2 weeks later, Bob was discharged because he was injured. Dan had to face the rest of his experiences alone. He learned how to march, fire a gun, and how to endure many obstacles. After boot camp, Dan went to infantry training right outside of Oceanside, California. From there, he was shipped to Hawaii, the Philippines, Taiwan, and finally Okinawa, where he became a scout sniper. Dan hated his current job guarding prisoners, so in 1964, Dan volunteered to go to Vietnam when the war started. He got transferred to Camp Pendleton, and just 2 weeks later, was shipped to Vietnam. He was a corporal scout sniper, getting ready to face more hardships than he could have ever imagined. Dan's job as a scout sniper was setting up ambushes, scouting and patrolling, and sniping. He got promoted to sergeant on the battlefield when the current sergeant died. He got promoted again to chief scout for the same reason. He and his group fought in 7 major battles. In his 1 year in Vietnam, he had 8 showers and 2 hot meals. Needless to say, it was rough. In Dan's 5 years in the military, he experienced some pretty hard things. Some were positive, most were negative. One experience he remembers well is falling out of a helicopter. They were landing when suddenly they started receiving heavy fire, and the helicopter had to leave before actually touching the ground. Dan fell out while it was in the air, and luckily he was not seriously injured. Another meaningful event was when a young man in his unit died. Dan saw many people die, but this was especially heartbreaking because he knew this man very well. After the war, he went to this young man's mother. Dan told her what an amazing son she had. He was able to comfort the boy's mother and relieve her of some of her pain. This was not something that Dan had to do. In fact, it was probably something very hard for him to do, but he did it anyway. The things Dan was faced with were harder than anyone could ever fathom. In 1966, Dan left the military and went home to Albuquerque. 2 weeks later, he was in a college classroom. The military has affected him in countless ways. For example, he has lost a large portion of his hearing and suffers from a mental illness called PTSD. This means he is traumatized by the memories and feelings from the war. Some positive effects are that he works harder now, and he does not take life for granted. This is because he has seen the lives of those being affected by the war. He has decided life is too short to go around doing nothing. Dan has worked hard all of his life and has never forgotten how lucky he is to live in a country like America. This interview was rather personal to me because this man is not just anyone. This man is my grandfather. His stories have opened my eyes to see just how much veterans have sacrificed for our country. Dan did not have to serve our country, but he did, and he did not have to go to that boy's mother. He did not have to live his life with a purpose and meaning, but he did, and that's what makes him so amazing. When I think about what I would do in that situation, it makes me realize how much courage my grandfather had. It also makes me realize how much respect he is owed. He did not have to fight for the safety of our country and the safety of Vietnam, but he did. He is a true hero, even if people don't usually think of him as one. I have a newfound level of respect for him and every other veteran there is. Veterans deserve that from everyone ever. So next time you meet a veteran, thank them for their bravery and selflessness.